In this tutorial, we're using 3 different shades of pink chenille yarn. We have a baby pink, a tan pink, and a fuchsia type pink. We also have some fiber fill, a 6.5 millimeter crochet hook, 2 knitting needles to keep the parts that we sew on in place, fabric glue, stitch markers, a darning needle, oval eyes that measure 15 millimeters, and a pair of scissors. The stitches used in this video include the single crochet, double crochet, an increase, invisible decrease, chain stitch, and a magic circle. Now we're going to be working on the nose. We have the light pink, the tan colored pink, and the fuchsia colored pink. We're going to start with our light pink, and this is going to be for the top of the nose. We're going to start with 4 chains. We're going to make our slip knot. And then 4 chains. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 chains, and we're going to do 1 more since we're doing single crochets. And then we're going to do 10 single crochets all the way around. Here is our first single crochet. We're going to add our stitch marker. And then here is our second, our third, and in this top stitch we're going to do 3 crochets, so numbers 4, 5, and 6. There's number 4, number 5, and number 6, all in the top chain. Next we're going to do number 7. I'm going to feel around. It's this stitch here. There's number 7. And then number 8. And in this last stitch, we're doing number 9 and 10. So 2 in the last stitch. Number 9 and number 10. And this is the top of our nose. For our next row, we're going to change to the tan colored pink. This is the pink that matches the body. So we're going to go into our first stitch here. But for these stitches, we're just going to be using this back loop, or if you're looking at it this way, it's the top loop. So the loop, not this one here, but the one in the back. So we're going to go into that back loop here. And then we're going to pull up a loop. And then we're going to take the tan pink, put it over our hook, pull it through the 2 loops, and then we're going to go into the next stitch here. In that back loop. And then we're going to make a single crochet. And then we're going to add our stitch marker on that single crochet. And we're going to continue making the single crochets all the way around. So that's our first. Here's our second. Our third. Here's our fourth. Here's our fifth. Our sixth. Our seventh. Eighth. Here's our ninth. Oops. And then our 10th. And we have our nose, so we're going to pull up a loop, and then we're going to cut off this lighter yarn so it doesn't get in our way. We're going to cut this off. And here we have the yarn that we were working with, the tan colored pink yarn, and we're going to do 4 times the size of the snout so that we have enough to sew it on. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to do 1 more, 4, then we're going to pull it through. We're going to get our darning needle. Remove the stitch marker. We're going to skip a stitch, then go into the next stitch. And then to the back loop of that first stitch. And then we're going to go into one of the loops in the back to secure it. And then out to the front. Then we're going to go back in on that next stitch because we like to start from inside of the nose. So we're done with the nose, and we're just going to add the nostrils. For the nostrils, we're going to take the darkest pink. I tried using the pink that we used on the body, but it was very hard to see. So I'm just going to use the darkest pink. And I'm going to tie a knot. So just right here. And then I'm going to put both sides into the nose. So let's start with this side. And I'm going to go at the end here, so the end stitch here. Okay. Then I'm going to make sure it's nice and tight. And I'm going to put the darning needle on the shorter side now. And then I'm going to put it into the next stitch. And then we have our first nostril. And then I'm going to take the longer side again, put it on the darning needle. I'm going to go into the end stitch, and then I'm going to tie a knot. Sure it's nice and tight. And then I'm going to go down the stitch here. And here we have our 2 nostrils. And then we could just tie the ends together. And cut the end. And then just tuck it in. And now we're done with our nose. Now we're going to make the ears. We're going to start with a magic circle. And inside of our magic circle, we're going to do 6 single crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5, oops, number 5, and number 6. Then we're going to pull our tail to bring all of our crochets together in a circle. For our next row, we're going to do a single crochet and an increase all the way around. We're going to start with our first single crochet. Add the stitch marker. And then we're going to do an increase. Then a single crochet. Then an increase. A single crochet. And an increase. And here we should have a total of 9 single crochets. For our third row, we're going to do 2 single crochets and an increase all the way around. We're going to start with our first single crochet, add our stitch marker, there's our second, then an increase, two single crochets, 1, 2, and then an increase, then 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and then an increase. And And here we should have a total of 12 single crochets. For row number 4, we're going to do 3 single crochets and an increase all the way around. Here's our first single crochet. I'm going to add our stitch marker, our second, and our third. Then we're going to do an increase, then back to 3 single crochets. There's 1, 2, 3 single crochets, then an increase, and 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to end with an increase. And here we should have a total of 15 single crochets. Then we're going to measure 4 times the size of our ear. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4 times. We're going to cut it. Make sure that we have enough to sew our ear on. Then we're going to pull it through. And then we're going to skip 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3 stitches. We're going to go into the 4th here. And we're going to bring our ears together so that it kind of pinches in the middle. Like this. So you see like a little pinch here. Because I think if I left it straight, it'll look like cat ears, but if we pinch it, maybe it'll look more like a pig's ear. So then once we have it pinched, we're going to go back out on that next stitch. So kind of like this. And then we're finished with our ear, and we're going to make 2 of these. To make the feet, we're going to start with a magic circle. And inside of our magic circle, we're going to do 6 single crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5, and number 6. And then we're going to pull our tail to make all of our crochets come together. That was a little bit hard. And next we're going to do an increase in each of the stitches. So here is our first crochet. We're going to add our stitch marker. And these crochets get kind of hard to see, so sometimes you have to open them, but we'll see how this goes. So that was our first, and then we're going back into the same crochet for an increase. And then here is our second one. And here is our third. Our fourth. And then our fifth. And here we're on our last increase, number 6. And here we should have a total of 12 single crochets going around. Next, we're going to do 12 single crochets all the way around, but we're only going to go into a single loop. So we have a front loop and then a back loop. So we're going to use just the back loops. So if you look at it this way, it's that top loop that you see when you're looking downwards on the magic circle. So we're going into one loop, and then we're going to make our single crochet. And that's our first single crochet. And then we're going into the next, just the top loop only. Again, just the top loop only. And again, through the top loop. Through the top. Through the top. And then we're going to continue just going through the top loops. And as you can see, it kind of separates the two. And here we're on our final crochet of the row, and we should have 12. So it should look like this, where we have like a top, and then we're going to start with our crochets going downwards. So this is the top of the hoof area. So now we're going to work on more of the leg area. So we're going to change it to the yarn that's the color of the body. We're going to remove our stitch marker. And then again, for the rest of the rows, we're just going to use that top loop of our crochets. So we're going to go into our first stitch, and we're going to pull up a loop. Then we're going to take our new color, our pink, our lighter pink. Then we're going to pull through the 2 loops. And then we're going to find the top loop of the next stitch, go into that loop, yarn over, and make that single crochet. And then we're going to add our stitch marker. Then we're going to continue these until we have 12. There's our second, our third, fourth, fifth, number 6. Let's try and find that. Number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11, and then number 12 where we started. So our foot should look something like this. And then we're going to do the same for the next row. For our next row, we're going to do 12 single crochets all the way around, just in that top loop. So the back loop, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, number 10, number 11, and number 12. And here we're finished with our foot. So we're going to cut the darker yarn. We could have cut this earlier as well, but we'll just cut it now. And then we're going to get 4 times the yarn so that we can sew it on. There's 1, 2, there's 3, and 4. So we're going to cut it. Then we're going to pull it through. Remove our stitch marker. We're going to get our darning needle. And here we have our darning needle. We're going to skip a stitch, then go into the next. And then we're going to go into that back loop or the top stitch of the first crochet where we started. And that makes our little fake crochet. And then we're going to go through one of the loops in the back here. And then we're going to come out to the front. Go back into that first loop, that first stitch. And then, as always, rather than later, we'll just go into the next stitch now so we can begin to sew this foot onto the body. Next, we're going to make the arm. We're going to start with a magic circle. And inside of our magic circle, we're going to do 4 single crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4 single crochets in our magic circle. Then we're going to pull it to bring all of our crochets together. For our next row, we're going to do an increase in each of the stitches. So we're going to start with this first stitch. make our crochet. And then we're going to get our stitch marker. And then we're going to do another in the same stitch for an increase. So that's our first increase. And then we're going to do a second increase. It's kind of hard to see the stitches here. Here's our third increase. And here is our fourth increase. Oops. And here we should have a total of 8 single crochets. Next we're going to do a color change, and we're going to work in just that top or back loop. So we're just going into one loop that's on the top or in the back. We're going to pull up a loop. Then we're going to get our lighter pink, pull through the 2 loops, and we're going to make a single crochet in that next stitch. So that's our first crochet. And then we're going to go into the next stitch. There's 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. And here is number 8. And for our next row, we're going to do 8 single crochets in just that top loop or back loop. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number 6, number 7, and here is number 8. And this is our little arm and little hoof. We're going to get enough yarn so that we could sew it onto our body. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4 times as much. And we're going to cut that. And of course we can cut the pink, darker pink. Here I'm going to cut these both pretty short. Then we're going to pull our yarn through. And then we're going to get our darning needle. And here we have our darning needle. We're going to skip a stitch, go into the next, and then go into that back loop of the first stitch. And then we're going to go to one of the loops in the back. Then out, and then through the next stitch so that we can start sewing on our body. And here we're going to make 2 of the legs and the hoof, and 2 of the arms and the little hoof. To make the tail, we're going to start with a slip knot. And then we're going to do 15 chains. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 chains, and then 1 chain for our single crochets, so a total of 16 chains. Then we're going to start with our single crochets. We're going to do our first one in the next chain down. There's our first single crochet. We're going to add our stitch marker. And then we're going to keep doing single crochets all the way down. So there's our second, third, fourth, fifth, number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, number 13, number 14, and number 15. And then we have our little curly tail. It just curves by itself. And then we're going to pull our yarn through. We're going to cut just enough so that we can sew the tail on. Then we're going to pull up our loop. Then I'm just going to tie these together. Then we'll weave through this side. So we'll get our darning needle. And then we'll weave through a few of these stitches. And then back up a few. And then we're just going to cut it. And now we're finished with our tail. Now we're going to add the tail to the back of our pig, and we're going to put it 10 stitches above. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stitches, and then we're going to put it right above that stitch, and then we're just going to sew it on here right in the middle. So this looks like it's pretty much in the middle of the body here. And then we're just going to sew it right on. We can sew it upwards like this, or we can sew it to the side. I think I'll just do it upwards. I think that should be enough. And then I'm just going to go back up and to the tail, go through the loop here to tighten it. And then I'm going to go back down and then through the bottom here. And that should secure our tail. And then I'm going to cut the end. And now we're finished with our little tail. So now we're going to put everything onto our body. Here I found the increase. And this is on row number, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and row number 18 before we did the 24 single crochets. And then here is the other side of the increase. So in between we have the 24 single crochets. So this is the front of our pig. So we're going to add the ears. So for our ear, we're going to place it at the bottom of the 7th row. So this part of the ear will hit the bottom of the 7th row. We're going to start here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we're going to put this at the bottom of the 7th row. We're going to line it with our stitch marker. So I'm going to add this knitting needle to hold it. And then we're going to do the same with the other side. So for the other ear, the pinch sides, they go facing forward. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the bottom of the 7th. And I'm going to line it with the stitch marker here. And then I'm going to put it in with this knitting needle. So like this. For our nose, we're going to put it 13 rows down. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we're going to put it at the bottom of this 13th row. And then we want to make sure that it's in the middle. So here we have our 2 stitch markers, and so it should be at the 12th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is the middle. So we're going to have it in the middle here at the bottom of the 13th row. So this is the middle of the nose. So we're going to put it right here. So the side here is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, And there's number 10, so like on the 10th stitch from our stitch marker. And this one should be the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they should line up with the edges of the snout at the 10th stitch from the markers. So let's sew on the snout. And here we have our darning needle. We're going to go into the next stitch on the nose so that we can start from the inside. And then here we're going to go into the body. And then we're going to go back into the snout, the nose, and then into the next stitch. On the nose, then into the previous, and the next stitch on the body, then into the previous, and the next stitch on the nose, and then back into the previous and the next on the body. So we're going to kind of go in an angle here. And then back into the previous, and then the next on the nose. And then we're going to continue to do this until we get to the end, and we're going to add a little bit of stuffing into the nose. When we get to the top of the nose, we want to make sure we're at the bottom of the 13th row and sewing into those stitches there. So here I'm going to go into the next on the nose, and then down into the previous and the next stitch, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So at the bottom of that 13th row. Then we're just going to continue sewing on the nose. When we're working on the top stitches here, we want to make sure that our nose is straight. So just take a look at the nose, make sure that it's coming along straight. Otherwise, you might want to adjust the sides a little bit, but it looks here, it looks like it's straight. And then we can also add some stuffing to straighten it out. And here we're getting closer to the end. There's only a couple stitches left, so I'm going to add just a tiny bit of stuffing in the nose. So here's our stuffing, and I'll just add a little bit in there. And then I'm going to continue to sew it on. Make sure that it's on nice and straight. my last stitch here. I'm going to go up. Then down. Then I'm going to go down into the body and just end it right next to the nose right here. And then cut it. And then we're finished with sewing on the nose. Now that we finished sewing on our nose, we're ready to sew on our 2 ears. For the ears, we have the top of the ear right below the 7th row. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is the top of our ear. So we're going to sew it right there. And then for this ear, we have it in the same place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's at the bottom of that 7th row. And how we centered it is we counted this line here as the center of the head. So if we put our finger here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and there's partial 11 here. And then we have the ear. So we're going to put our finger here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then we have that 11 far in the ear. So it's 11 from the center of the nose. So we're going to start sewing on this ear. I'm going to get the yarn out. We have our yarn, and I added a darning needle, and now we're going to sew on the ear. So I'm going to go into the next stitch from where the yarn is coming out from. So I'm going to go into this stitch here so that we can start from the inside of the ear. And then I'm going to go into the head. So I'm going to go through these 2 stitches. And then I'm going to go into the previous stitch. And then into the next stitch of the ear. So the next stitch would be right after where we have it pinched. So it would be this stitch here. And then I'm going to go back into the previous stitch of the head, and then into the next stitch on the head. And then here I'm going to go into the previous on the ear. And then into the next stitch on the ear. And this should be facing the front of our body. So I'm going to go back into the previous stitch on the head to the next. And then to the previous and the next stitch on the ear. And we're going to continue to sew this on until we get all the way around the ear, and then we'll meet back. And when we get to that part of the ear where we're on the bottom of the 7th row, we want to make sure that we're going into that row. So you just want to count it. You can probably put a marker here too, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going into this row here. You just want to make sure that you're in that row so the other ear aligns with this one. As we get close to the end, we could add some stuffing. Mainly to the back of the ear because we want to keep our little dent in the front. And then we're going to finish this off. So I'm going to go out of the head on our last stitch here. Just go to the bottom here. That should secure it. And then just cut it off. And then we're done adding this ear. And as you can see, we have that little pinch in there. So maybe it looks more pig-like than cat-like. And then we're going to do the same with our other ear here. And here I sewed on the other ear. And now we're ready to move on to our arms and legs. So here I stuck on the arms and the legs, and I positioned them by using the nose. So here's our nose that we have sewn on. And then I went from the bottom of the nose and I went down 2 rows. So 1, 2, and I have the top of the arm at the bottom of the 2nd row. And then from the middle of the nose, I put this blue stitch marker. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 stitches from the middle, and that's where the side of the arm will be sewn on this row right after that 5th stitch. So this side is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so I'm going to sew it into this row here. And then for the legs, from the bottom of the arm, where I'll sew the bottom of the arm here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and then on the bottom of that 5th row is where the top stitch of the leg will go. And then I just lined them up with the arms. So now we're going to sew on our arms and our legs. So here for the arm, we have our yarn tucked inside, so I'm going to take it out. Then I'm going to line it up in the correct spots. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I should also put a stitch marker here so that I know which line I'm sewing into. So it would be this up here. So I'll be sewing this edge on this row here. So kind of like this. Here we have our darning needle, and we're going to start sewing on the arm. So I'm going to start in this row where I have the stitch marker to which row I'm supposed to go into. So I'm going to go into the body here, and then up to the arm. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch on the arm, then the previous stitch on the body into the next stitch. Then here, I'm going to turn the pig a little bit. We're going to go into the previous stitch on the arm and into the next stitch. Turn it around. And then I'm going to go into the previous and the next, and here I should be on that row. That's 2 from the bottom of the nose. And I'm going to turn it around again. To go into the previous and into the next stitch. On our arm, then the previous and the next stitch, keeping it in the same line on our body, then back to the arm, going into the previous and into the next stitch, and then the previous and the next stitch on the body. And we're going to continue doing this around the arm here, and we'll meet back when we get close to the beginning. So that would be the end. And here we're at the bottom stitches and we're close to the end. So we're going to put a little bit of stuffing into it. Remove the knitting needle. So we want to get in here. Should be enough. It's a pretty small arm, so we don't need that much stuffing in it. And then we're going to finish sewing in our arm next. And then into the previous and the next. And here we're at the beginning. We're just going to go in one more time to the previous and then the next. And then I'm going to go into the body here. Then I'm going to go out on the other side. And here we can go back in and out this side. And then it looks like it's pretty secured on there. So we're going to cut it. So now that we've completed our arm here, we're going to sew the arm and the two legs on the same way, and we'll meet back when we're done sewing these on. And here we're doing our leg. We're going into the next stitch on our leg, into the previous and the next stitch on the body, then into the previous, and into the next on the leg, and then into the previous and the next on the body, and then into the previous and the next on the leg, then into the previous, and then we're going to go in an angle for the next stitch because the leg is going in a curve. Then we're going back into the previous, and then the next stitch on the leg, then into the previous and the next stitch on the body, and then the previous and the next stitch on the leg, then the previous and the next stitch, and we're on the correct row because we have our stitch marker there. I'll remove the stitch marker. And then we're going into the previous and the next stitch on the leg, and then into the previous and the next stitch on the body, and here we're going to add the stuffing into the leg. I'm going to remove the knitting needle, then add some stuffing. And here you can kind of shape the foot a little bit when you add the stuffing in. That looks pretty firm for the leg. And then we're getting close to the end here. So we're going to go into the previous and the next stitch on the leg, and then the previous and the next stitch on the body. Make sure that we pull it tight. Then back into the leg. Into the body. And here we're getting to the end. And here we're on our last stitches on the body. Then here I'm going to go into the leg and then down into the body here. So we come out on the other side. Then I'm going to go back into the body. And then go out on the other side of the leg. That should secure our leg here. Then we're going to cut our yarn. And we can just tuck the end in there. And now we're done sewing on our legs and all of our arms. Now we're ready to add the eyes to our pig here. I already put the glue on, and so if we count from the top of the head here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and on the 12th row I have the glue, and it's also like 2 rows from the nose. So if you look at the nose, there's 1 and 2 rows, and then we have the eye there. And then from the middle of the nose, if we count this as the middle, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's on the 6th stitch from the middle of the nose. And then I have the eyes. And this pig is kind of tired, so we have the little tired looking eyes. And then I have it for the other side as well. I got the glue on my fingers. So we want to make sure that they're nice and even. And once we have our eyes on and we like the way it looks, we're finished with our hunchback pig. And you can even add a heart. And this concludes the tutorial on crocheting the hunchback pig. I hope you are able to catch part 1. I thank you for taking the time to watch our videos. If you find our videos useful, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Also, hit the notification bell so you know when our next video is out. Thanks for watching and have a great day.